Hi everybody! So, yeah, I had to bend so far to turn it on. Anyways, so happy Sunday, happy Palm Sunday, and yeah, Palm Sunday is my favorite, not my absolute favorite, but one of my favorite days of the year. I'm a Sunday school teacher, so I usually get to see my kids perform in church. Obviously, we don't get to do that this year, but I still love the day, so hopefully you're having a good Palm Sunday. Today, we are going to be talking about trusting God when you're suffering or when you're dealing with something really hard. So, yeah, I was talking to my friends about what they thought I should talk about, and a lot of them were saying, I really feel like right now people are struggling with trusting God during this time where we're suffering, and I think that could make a really good topic because it is really hard to trust God during suffering, and we all experience suffering at some point. And yeah, that's why I decided to talk about it today. And I have a little outline here on my computer. That's why I'm staring at this. I'm not watching Netflix or anything while I'm talking. So yeah. So I actually want to focus in on one particular verse today, which is Jeremiah 29:11, which I actually bookmarked my spot today, guys. I am on it. So Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." That verse is one that we hear a lot in church, and just when you're going through a hard time, people will send it to you, and it's a really good verse, but I think sometimes we don't really think about it because we've heard it so much, so I wanted to talk about it today. First thing I want to say is that it does not say that we won't experience suffering. Nowhere in the Bible does God ever tell us that we won't experience suffering because we're Christians. In fact, sometimes people think that Christians will have to go through more suffering, which I don't know if that's true, but a lot of people will think that because it does bring us closer to Him. And so I just want to clarify that God never says that we won't experience suffering. The Bible doesn't whitewash suffering either. It doesn't say, oh, you'll experience suffering, but it's okay. It will straight up say, think about Job. Job's life was awful. He had so much taken away from him, and God was totally okay with it. He was he approved of everything that happened to him, and his life was not easy, but the Bible doesn't hide that fact. The Bible has a whole book about how Job overcame his suffering. So, suffering is all throughout the Bible, not just Job, but it's all throughout the Bible. Think about what happened to the disciples. I mean, some of them died in awful ways, and one of them, is it Peter? I'm having a brain fart. I think it's Peter. He gets hung upside down on a cross and is crucified. That's an awful way to die. So, today, I want to talk about how there can be a purpose for our suffering. Because, yes, we will experience suffering, and that's sad, but I believe that there's a purpose behind it. So the first thing I want to say is that as Christians, it can bring us closer to our fellow Christians. I think an awesome thing about suffering, I know it sounds really weird to say, but an awesome thing about suffering is that it brings us closer to those around us. A lot of times, when I'm at my worst is when I'm closest to those around me, because I have to ask them for help. I realize that I cannot handle this on my own, and that I need to ask for prayer. Once I became comfortable with asking for prayer from other people, it brought me so much closer to those around me. I text my friends literally all the time. Hey, I just found out this person's sick. Hey, I have a big test tomorrow and I'm really worried about it. Hey, my mom, is having a rough day. I don't know if that was a random one, but, just constantly, telling them, hey, I'm going through something and I can't handle this alone. Can you pray for me? Can you be there for me during this? They have showed up. My friends have showed up. They are always there saying, yes, I'll pray for you. And I know that they actually do. So, that brings me to my next verse, which is Galatians 6, verse 2. This is right here. So, actually, one of the people that I care about so much in this life, who is always, taking care of me and praying for me, he highlighted this verse at my graduation party last summer, and so I have an even more special place in my heart for this. Don't mind my neighbor's dog barking in the background. Sorry about that. It says, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. That's Galatians 6 verse 2. So like I was saying earlier, the Bible tells us not to walk alone, because just as Adam had Eve made, like God made Eve for Adam, we are never meant to be alone. We are meant to walk with each other in this life. We have God, but God also put other people in our lives so that we can share what we're going through and our suffering with them. The next part I want to talk about is that suffering can give us examples that we can share with others. Like I talked about in my last video, I have experienced, lots of suffering in my life. Like, I have a really good life, and I still have experienced, lots of trials and stuff. And those things have given me a testimony, like I shared with you. I have always loved hearing people's testimonies. I think it's a beautiful thing that we can hear about someone's story and how they went through something really hard, but God brought them through it. And I think that's one of the most amazing ways we can bring people closer to God, is sharing our testimonies with them. So when I'm suffering, I'm like, I can't wait to see how God's gonna give me a story to tell to others with this. The next thing is it teaches to rely on Him. A lot of times, I know when things are going well, it's easy for me to stop thinking about God. It's easy for me to start thinking, wow, I'm doing so well, like, I got this, like, God, move aside, like, your girl got an A on her test, like, she don't need any help. And then I fail the next one or something. I oftentimes get humbled. A couple months ago, I had basically the worst couple of weeks of my life, and my mom told me that God was humbling me, which is probably really true, because I was kind of starting to think that I had my life together, and then a speeding ticket, a rear end, and a pink eye later, I realized I don't got my life together. But I'm grateful for that, because now that I have been humbled, I realize, like, I am 18 years old and I need some help, okay? So that brings me to my next verse, which is 2 Corinthians 1 verse 8 to 9. It says, "We do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about the troubles we experienced in the province of Asia. We were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, so that we despaired of life itself. Indeed, we felt that we had received the sentence of death. But this happens that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God, who raises the dead." Mic drop, okay? Like, God raises the dead, okay? Me getting an A on my test is not compared to that, okay? So that is one of the other things I want to focus on when you're suffering, is that it's a good experience to learn to rely on Him. Especially in America, I feel like we're such a society that likes to think that we are so put together and we got this, and we don't need anyone's help. But we don't, like, we need God's help. And that's what they're saying here, They had extreme suffering, and they learned to rely on God through that. And actually, that reminds me, so I teach youth group at my church, and yesterday we were talking about this subject, and we asked our kids, like, do you think you talk to God more when your life's going well or when it's not going well? And almost every single person, I think it might have been every single one, said, oh, definitely when I'm not doing well. Which I find so interesting. Like, why don't we rely on God when things are going well? Like, why do we only come to Him when things are going bad? Like, this quarantine has made me spend so much more time with God. It made me realize how much time I spend doing things that I really don't need. Like, do I really need to spend 6 hours a day on Instagram? Probably not, So, that's just something to think about, Maybe once you get out of this quarantine, try to think of how you can still spend a lot of time with Him. So, now that we know some of the reasons behind suffering and what can be good from it, I want to focus on how we stay positive and trusting in God while we might be suffering. The first thing is, I do this, I try to do it every day. I write down every day, like, I like writing it down because then I can look back on it, 5 things that I'm grateful for. And I try to not reuse them every day. Like, yes, I can make it really quick, go family, friends, God, food, home, But I try to think specifically about my day and what I could be grateful for that happened in it. And I think it's just a way to self-conscious. Like, maybe you had a really bad day, but I bet you could still come up with 5 things that you can be grateful for during it. Next is study his word and be active in it. Now, what do I mean by be active in it? No, you don't have to run while reading the Bible, but a lot of times when I'm reading my Bible, I know that I can, like, read the words and then not really think about what they mean. So I like to read a paragraph or something and then kind of just talk about, in my own words, what that verse means. So here's, like, the book that I've been reading right now. And on the sides, you can see I write lots of little notes to myself, like, what does this mean? Oh, like, that was a lot of big words. What does that mean to me? Okay, got you. Or it's really interesting because it can also help you, like, I look at my old Bible journaling and I'm like, what was I writing? But I mean, that was where I was at in that time of my life, and that was my understanding of the book at that time in my life. And then you can look back on it and be like, wow, I gained so much more understanding since I last read this. So yeah, I encourage you to write in your Bible if you feel comfortable, or write in a journal, like, write about what did that verse mean to you, you know, not so that you're not just reading the words, because this might seem like, oh, these words don't matter anymore, this was written such a long time ago, but I promise you there is such rich, like, wisdom in these books still for today. So start every day by thanking God when you wake up. That might sound really dumb, but every day when I wake up in this nice little bed here, I try to go, it's real simple, hold the hands and go, God, thank you for this day, thank you for waking me up this morning. Yep, it might sound really dumb, but it helps me to not be like, oh, I hate myself, I hate that I woke up, oh, I want to sleep more, you know. I know we've all had those mornings, so don't pretend like I'm the only one. And the next thing I said that you could think that you could do to help is listening to more Christian music. Yes, I love country music. I choose to listen to country music more than any other genre, probably, if I'm honest. But listening to Christian music really gives me a mood change. It helps me to, you know, not be so overwhelmed. Music really calms me, especially when it's Christian music, and there's so much good Christian music out there. It's not all hymnals or whatever you don't like. If you like hymns, then you listen to hymns, but I think I'll try to link the playlist that I've been listening to all the time in my bio. I made it at the beginning of quarantine, and I have been listening to it so much because there's been so much good Christian music lately that I have been jamming to. So it's all in that playlist, so I'll try to link it in the bio for you. It's on Spotify, so sorry if you're an Apple Music friend, but, you know, that's what my family plan has, so yeah. And then the last thing I have talked about before, but I still think it's a really good way that we can stay positive and trusting in God during this time, and ask for prayer. You know, you can ask me, you can ask your friends, ask your parents, or obviously you can still pray for yourself, but I mean, I think that's so important, and I think it'll make you feel less alone in your suffering as well. So yeah, I hope that this gave you some tips and made you feel a little bit better about maybe something you're going through or something you have gone through, help you in the future to see that this suffering has a greater meaning maybe, and help you stay positive and trusting in God during it. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great Sunday, and bye!